fairy tales are kind of interesting if you were to put them all in one world. Well, I kind of have a concept for a world kind of like after the fairy tale kind of thing, or like nursery rhymes or whatever. And it's kind of based on like fairy tales and nursery rhymes and whatever, obviously. But it's sort of a demonstration of how like a childish imagination can sort of twist into a warped view of the world if you kind of think about it too much, or hypothetically if the fairy tale went wrong, like off, wrong, whatever. Because there's like multiple versions of fairy tales and whatever. The first one that I thought about a lot is Red Riding Hood. Red Riding Hood, I feel like in this world would be kind of a hunter, like a hunter character. And basically her backstory is that she did run away from the wolf before the wolf was ever able to eat her. And so her grandma just essentially just died. And now she's hunting for the head of the wolf that ate her grandma. A bit of a segue to the next thing is the fact that there are 3 essential big bad wolves. 3 that I can remember off the top of my head right now. There is the Red Riding Hood big bad wolf, the 3 Little Pigs big bad wolf, and the Boy Who Cried wolf. Each one is a bit of a magical wolf due to the fact that they each have their different little power. Red Riding Hood's wolf has the power to so they can like mimic voices and whatever. They can't really fully change their form. They can like change their voice to sound like certain people. The 3 Little Pigs big bad wolf is just genetically better in general. They can blow harder, they can run faster, they're more agile. And actually talking about the 3 Little Pigs, the 3 pigs, only the older brother survived, like the one that built their house out of bricks, because the other two were not fast enough. And also the time that the story takes place in this universe was during like a big famine. I mean, yeah, the big bad wolf were already eating other animals and whatever, but there's like animals that are non-sentient and then animals that are sentient. And unfortunately, the big bad wolf and 3 Little Pigs are sentient. The 3rd big bad wolf is just more clever. Like, it's like the 3 wolves, and they kind of each have different powers. But anyways, the reason why he's so clever is he was technically when the Boy Who Cried wolf, technically he was there. He's not in line of sight of the boy and whatever, and he was just waiting until no one would believe him to get him. Sort of like the evil mastermind of the group, but they are all brothers. So, and then of course there is the like poems and nursery rhymes and whatever, like the Jabberwocky. I don't actually know what a Jabberwocky is, but I guess in my head, well, it's my dream, I kind of imagine it as kind of a king of monsters, like dragon-ish. That's kind of my concept of it, and it's sort of a king, and it's technically it has, since it's like since it's the king of the beasts. It has the ability to revive itself, and it's also very strong. But the boy in the story is now kind of the king of the humans. Well, one of the kings of the humans. It's like one of the kingdoms. And he's referred to as the Monster Slayer since he killed the king of creatures. I mean, yeah, of course, the king of creatures can revive, but it's just nice to know that someone could kill the king of creatures. And I'm also kind of looking at fairy tales that have a general motif. Like, for example, for Red Riding Hood, it's don't trust strangers. Like, don't give information to strangers. Three Little Pigs is work hard. The Jabberwocky I just chose for fun. I don't really think it has a motif. But then there is another one. Oh, Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack is now just a really, really rich. Is just a rich man. Because of course he's also seen as a giant slayer. But essentially just a really rich man. Who gives to the poor. He doesn't really associate with the rich. He's a rich man that only associates with the poor. And technically, the one of the contractors that the Robin Hood in this universe, because Jack and Robin Hood kind of have Jack gives Robin Hood a home. Robin Hood makes sure that corrupt rich people cannot win. Anyways. And then there is technically the woman that lives in the shoe does exist, but it's not really that important to the story. They just live under one of the human king's lands. There is some kingdoms have wars, like some monster and human kingdoms have wars against each other. Some monster and human kingdoms work in peace and whatever. And a lot of the stories actually have, a lot of the fairy tales actually have drastic changes to them. Like, for example, Snow White was never able to wake up because, in my mind, love isn't something love at first sight isn't something that happens. There can be attraction at first sight, but not love. Love takes time. Love takes effort. Love is not easy. It is difficult, and it can be obnoxious. So essentially, Snow White died in a dream. That's just something that happens. There is also alternate dimensions, but I just want to add that there's nothing that really does it. There is an asylum where a lot of actually characters go. And some of these are just based sort of off, just some actually real life diseases that can happen. It is, and I think that once I actually say the name of the person, like the sort of the owner, like the highest manager, you will sort of get the concept of where I kind of got the idea for the asylum from. The owner of this asylum is referred to as Miss Velvet, or, well, Miss Velvet Heart, but you can sort of see kind of where that comes from. Because one of the doctors is named, they're named Dr. Cat, like C-A-T-T, but they're fine with being referred to as Mr. Cheshire. And one of the occupants of this asylum is Alice. Now, I just want to note that this asylum isn't like the old asylums. They know what they're doing, and they know, like, kind of how to help people. Like, it's more of a mental institution, but they refer to it as an asylum because, I guess, technically this world is kind of like a modern age, but kingdoms never actually faded. So going by Alice in Wonderland, I'm going to explain what each character is in this world. Alice is a little girl who suffers from Alice in Wonderland syndrome. You can just look that up. And she was admitted by she was admitted by actually one of the previous patients. And then the next one is Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Like, they were conjoined twins, but then they got separated. But unfortunately, they don't really like being away from each other, so that's not exactly good. So essentially, they're also kind of crazy. I mean, they're able to function in the real world, so they're allowed to go out and stuff. It's just they kind of are mentally lower, like a lower IQ or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really bother them. They're treated almost equally. They just have a couple more repercussions due to previous incidents with them. Then the next one is the Mad Hatter, just sort of they were a hat maker, but if you know kind of where, you kind of know where those things kind of go. They went insane because of, I don't remember the exact chemical that was sometimes used in old hats, but they went insane because of that. And they're visited by actually an anthropomorphic. The only one that is actually more accurate to the story is the White Rabbit, because they are literally a anthropomorphic white rabbit, and they were the friend of the Mad Hatter. Sorry for the squeaking. Just sort of swing out on a chair. There's also that, whatever, the caterpillar, the worm creature. It's not anything, like, to a point. It's just a drug addict that they have to constantly keep away from Alice, because they just offer drugs to anyone that gets close to them. Then there is, and also Dr. Cat is not. Dr. Cat is not like a cruel doctor. He's actually very, very friendly and tries to help Alice, like sort of tries to help Alice as much as he can, but unfortunately he cannot let her leave the asylum. The asylum is referred to as Wonderland, though, so. And don't even ask, and please don't ask me, like, if technically the story of Alice in Wonderland doesn't exist in that world, then how was the like, mental disability called Alice in Wonderland syndrome? I know I usually think about this type of stuff really thoroughly, but right now, I'm not. I did not think of that. Anyways, technically technically it's also just a normal hospital. Wonderland is just a normal hospital, so, an old man called Humpty Dumpty, that got really hurt, does reside in there, and despite their best attempts, they cannot help him get back to normal. Let's move over to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Goldilocks is an orphan who ran away from an orphanage, and so just found a cabin in the woods, and was not really taught the dangers of the stranger danger, so she just kind of barged in, and you know how the story goes. But it does reside to three anthropomorphic bears, and the bears are nice. Mama Bear, Daddy Bear, and Baby Bear. And there's kind of, not technically, Goldilocks is not legally adopted, so they could be taken back to the orphanage at any point, but everyone just sort of recognizes that that Goldilocks is like the child of the Three Bears, as no one has ever seen Goldilocks like not beside these bears. They've never seen her before, like they never seen her when she was in the orphanage. They never saw her before her parents died. No one knew who Goldilocks was until she was unlegally adopted by the Three Bears. Oh goodness, I'm making the Three Bears sound as if they're criminals that just kidnapped a child. They're not criminals who just kidnapped a child. They're a loving family. There is also just a couple of just like myths and stories that exist in that world. For example, trolls do exist, and of course magic exists, but the magic system is a bit, I can't really describe it exactly. The biggest piece of it is that the world kind of feeds on imagination. So essentially everything could just be created by a child's imagination. Probably explain the entire magic system of the of this world in another kind of tape thing, but because I'm already kind of making this one a bit too long. You should ask what's your guys' favorite fairy tale or storyline. I should probably just get a book of fairy tales. Would you want me to draw these?